So there's science behind the fact that when you get to check something off or cross something off, that you get that rush of dopamine. It's that reward. And so I used to joke, but I wasn't joking, that I would put things on my list, such as woke up, get coffee, because it was just in the morning, it was that dopamine, like done and done, right? You already had some momentum.
Hey there, and welcome to Work is Third, the podcast that is all about indulging in rest, setting boundaries, finding joy, and putting yourself first. I'm Dawn Hunter, your host, and I'm so excited you're here. In today's episode, I talk with Lavonna Roth, founder of Ignite Your Shine, about control, presence, and letting go of perfectionism. You'll hear honest reflections on burnout, the struggle with to-do lists, and why work doesn't have to come first to make an impact. If you want to skip around, I've added section markers in addition to the regular chapter markers, but honestly, you're going to want to stick around for the whole thing. All right, let's dive in. Hello, Lavonna. Welcome to the show.
Thank you, Dawn. Good to be here.
I'm really excited to dive into a conversation with you. I have admired you since I met you.
Well, thank you. Same.
You're welcome. But before we get started, I'd like to ask you to share a word that describes how you're doing today.
I'm going to go with hopeful.
Okay. Why hopeful?
Because I feel like life can throw like so many curveballs and different things can pop up. But I also feel like if you maintain that hope that you can work through things. And so despite how things can be up and down, especially more recently, I just know that things work out the way they're supposed to. So I'm going to remain hopeful.
I love that. I try to also hold on to the belief that things will work out how they're supposed to. It's hard sometimes.
It really is. And it took me a long time to figure that out. Like I really felt that I didn't have the same belief that things would always work out. Like I just knew that things were going to happen, but I didn't really realize the amount of control that I had. And even thinking from the mindset view, this is what I can control and this is what I can't control. And how do I find the boundary?
Ooh, all words I love. The theme of control has come up before on this podcast. And the idea that some of our unhappiness comes from wanting to control outcomes, but also recognizing that there are things within your control and setting boundaries is something that is in your control.
Yes.
Yeah. So what does that look like in your life?
It looks like me getting crazy at first. like the head just goes wild and I can't get all the brain like basically to stop. And I just realize how much brain power I'm wasting on it. And then that's when I realized, thankfully it's taken some time to become that aware. But what I've realized is that if I pause and I just say, okay, Lavonna, in this moment, what can you control? And everything else, you're going to have to figure out a way to let go. And I'm finding that really helps me because what I can control is what I can also take action on. And that just really guides me.
Do you find it easy to take a pause?
In what way?
Well, I think a lot about being intentional and saying, let me think about this. What is going on? How can I react differently? Or what am I experiencing in this moment? I think that's hard for a lot of people. How do you get yourself to pause?
Well, this is where I would say it's definitely taken practice. First of all, that step of awareness to even realize you're doing it. Here's what I think was the catalyst for it is that I realized that when I do pause, how much better I feel afterwards. As a matter of fact, in those moments, sometimes I will actually make myself do a recording of meditation or hypnotherapy because what that helps me do is to recenter myself. That's the hard part though, because all I think is like, how many minutes is that going to be to do that? And I don't have that time. I've got this work to work on and I have other things to do. But I've come to the realization now of how powerful that is and how much it actually helps me in the long run because I can be over here spinning on the problem that came up or the challenge or the frustration. And then I can keep that going and elongate that, which actually takes more time. Or I can say, it's time to pause, do what you need to do to what can you control and what can you actually like meditate about or just do some hypnotherapy to step away and then come back in. It's also not uncommon for me to take my walk then and I go get my workout in.
Oh, that's a good way. So exercise is a way to give yourself a mental break, maybe?
Yes, I would say exercise, and I'm usually listening to something else unless the brain is so noisy that I can't even concentrate. At that point, it's all about nature, and I start focusing on what do I see and what do I hear. Down in one of our parks, we have the huge banyan trees. It is not uncommon for me again to walk up to them and literally touch them,
Mm.
and it's one of those, and I thank them. And so it's in that moment again, what can I control? What can I show gratitude for? Like all the things we hear, I guess I've never really looked at that way because I don't sit there and go, oh, what can I show gratitude toward? It's more of what do I notice? What do I see? What do I hear? And I love nature so much. So, and it's just something about when I touch the old banyan, there's 2 of them, so I will touch both of them and thank both of them. And especially after our last hurricane that we had that destroyed and it shaved them down so much, like, they look like they're doing great, but I looked it up, I think they're 150 years old.
Oh, wow.
And so there's just that being able to touch them is just, I don't know, grounding and grateful.
I was going to say grounding.
Yes.
Yes. I walk to yoga a couple nights a week. There's a studio really close to my house, and I did not have my phone with me last night. And so on my way home, I was walking and I said, I hear the insects chirping. I see the purple flowers. I smell the food from the restaurant I'm passing. And it was really nice because I don't think we observe as intentionally sometimes, especially when we're out for a walk. I mean, I give my husband a hard time sometimes because he will be out when he's walking the dog, like on his phone looking at Reddit.
How does he not fall?
I don't. He walks very slowly.
That's the key right there.
But I love just taking a moment to really observe what's around me and be more present. It's something I'm constantly working at, how to be more present.
Yeah. I think that's huge to do. And because there's so much noise out there, and we are always having a TV on or communicating with somebody or listening to a podcast, always this one, everybody, always this one. You heard it here, but you're listening to a book, like you're doing something. At what point do you literally just stop and or walk and run and have that moment to really hone in on what you hear and see? And I know I just have so much appreciation for it. And I don't even know how to explain it. The best way I can say it, I guess, is that I feel like I can breathe when I do that. And so what I love, and I don't know if anyone else is from the Midwest or up north, but being here in Florida, our grass, I learned from moving down here that our grass is not the best to put your feet in. Like it's tough. And so when I go up to Ohio, because I was just there last or the weekend, I took my shoes off and put my feet in the grass. And my husband just looked at me and laughed because he knew exactly why I was doing it. But it is just another way to ground. And it just felt so good.
Right. There, we have so many barriers between us and nature. And I recently read something that made me think of like our shoes are a barrier because
Yes.
we always have shoes on when we're out walking
Yes.
or in our yards.
Yeah.
And not when we're kids, of course.
That's so true. What changes?
What changes where it's like the proper thing to do to have shoes on?
Yes. Yes. You feel like the dirty feet, or this is so bad, but in my head, when I walk into the grass, I'm like, what dog was here?
Okay, to
Is
be
that
fair,
fair?
I think I think about the same thing all the time because I clean up after my dog sometimes, and I'm like, did I do a good enough job for the next person who walks by here?
Yes, exactly. No matter what, there's still residue. No matter what it is, there's still residue.
Always,
Didn't
yeah.
mean to spiral that in a whole different direction. But yes. And I actually, fun fact, I heard several years ago that as we get older, the shoes get more and more cushy because we just love the comfort of it. And what I hear is you have a ton of nerve receptors in the bottom of your feet. So when you are walking on the more cushy, like I'm gonna say, I won't say a brand, but
Well, like
the
memory
cushy.
foam
Yes, yes,
type shoes,
yes.
yeah.
That the nerve receptors actually start to dampen where they don't pick up on as much, and you're more likely to fall over time, like as you get much older, because the nerves can't pick up the balance as much or what you're stepping on. So they say you really should be out walking barefoot or even in hard shoes so that you get those nerve receptors where they need to be. Now, I did not fact check this. I do want to say this, but I was very intrigued by it because the truth is we do get cushier shoes as we get older.
I have I've had cushier shoes for a while.
There's no shame in that.
So now I'm wondering, this is new to me. I would love to read more about this because it's really fascinating to think about when we are not in touch with our surroundings as much, how that reduces our ability to feel. And there's probably multiple meanings to that. Yeah,
That's a
that's
good
really
point.
interesting. Well, we will try to find a link to share in the show notes for this episode.
Okay.
So if people want to learn more, they can.
Okay.
But let's go back to the idea of a pause. So I think we've been talking about pause in kind of the context of short breaks. But one of the things that I find even more challenging than that is longer breaks of stillness. And one of the things I've been trying to do more recently is just like lay in my bed, not take a nap or read or anything, but just lay there and observe and be still. Or sit on my couch, but comfortably, like get all the pillows
Yes.
behind my back, and
Yes.
get real comfortable, but just sit there.
Okay. So some of my hypnotherapy sessions I do can be up to like 40 minutes. So that would be a longer pause, but the time you go in a time warp where you're not even aware of time, right?
Yeah.
An interesting thing that I started recently, I'm listening to this book and I wish I could remember the name of it right now, but it is on meditation and it's about going deeper. What he talks about is that you start practicing, like laying in your bed, for example, and he talks about how you're in the, I believe it's the alpha state. And everybody, when they first wake up, is in the alpha state. And so if you go brush your teeth, for example, or go to the bathroom and then come back and you lay in bed, you're still going to be in the alpha state. But some people transition faster. Like some people just immediately, not immediately, but after some time will come out of the alpha state. You want to be in the alpha state, and he tells you to lay down back in the bed, and you start counting at 99 all the way down to 0. And you do this for 10 days, and then you go 75 counting down, and then 50, and then down to, I think it's 25. And so what you end up teaching your brain is that how to stay in an alpha state. So staying more present. My problem, Dawn, is I literally lay down and I go 99, 98, 97. And then I wake up going, oh my gosh, I fell asleep. Where was I? So I've done this for probably 6 days now. And like today, I think I got to 85 and then that was it.
That's
It's
not very
progress.
far.
But it's progress. Come on, give me something.
But I will give you credit, which is because 85 is better than 94. So
It was so bad. I'll keep trying.
So do you do 99 for 10 days and then 75 for 10 days?
Yes.
Okay.
Yep.
Oh, so how many days in total are you doing it?
I don't do math. So you
So wait, it's
I guess
99,
40,
75,
50, and then 25.
50, and then 25. So 40.
Yeah.
So for 40 days,
It's a commitment,
it is a commitment.
right? But I want to see how, because like when I do the hypnotherapy, for example, it's my friend Grace Smith, and she has an app. And what I find is that as soon as I hear her voice, I can feel myself slide. Where before the brain would just, I'd be trying to pay attention to her, but I had a really hard time until like maybe 5, 10 minutes into it. And it was almost near the end. And now I was just starting to get into that state of just really feeling the calm and the peace. And I don't know, just like a calm is the best way I can say it. And now, as soon as I hear her voice, I immediately feel like I don't even have to listen to her say any kind of comment about start to relax your forehead, smooth all the wrinkles around your eyes, which I wish that would actually work in other ways. But right, I know, I know. So, but as soon as I hear a voice, I go into it, and that's what I think is similar to what he's teaching. Is that you go the 100 to the 75? I really think it's the same concept.
I like that because it's somewhat like what I did on my walk, where I see this, I hear, taste, smell, etc. Same kind of intentional awareness of in this case, the numbers or the process. You remind me of something I heard recently. I cannot remember who is the person who's like a big advocate for this. You could have told me this for for all I remember.
I'll just take credit. No, I'm just kidding.
Go ahead and take credit for it. But it's where they say when you get up, you do like 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, and then you get out of bed and you go about your day. And
Okay.
it's like some way to overcome tiredness or fatigue or like a barrier to starting your day. But I really hate the idea of that.
We're not gonna love every idea, right? Her strategy.
For some people, I think maybe that really works. But I feel like we are conditioned to get up and go.
Yes.
And I want people to get up and pause.
Yes.
That's what, get up and take your time.
Yes. So here's something I put into practice and I've been sliding on, and it's bothering me. Like I literally the past 3 days, I've been trying to have a conversation with myself. So my sister and I went to Iceland like 2 Septembers ago, and we were there for 2 weeks. So I totally adjusted to the time zone. So when I came home, that's 4 hour difference. And so I was waking up really early in the morning. So I would set the alarm because I allowed myself to shift a little bit. I set my alarm for 5 a.m. and I got up diligently. And the very first thing I did was I always check my phone for emergencies. I am a mom. And so I check my phone for that. And what I'm finding right now is I'm getting sucked into, let me check the email really quick. Let me check Slack really quick. And the next thing I know, I've been on my phone for a while. Where when I got back from Iceland, I would check the phone for an emergency, keep it by my bed, go into my office where I have this awesome memory foam beanbag, and it's all fluffy in my blanket, and I have a pillow behind me. Like I love this spot. And I, in the moment, would choose what I want to do. So usually what I did was a session of hypnotherapy, and then I would grab a book that I wanted to read. But I have a bunch of books there because sometimes I feel like being in that intellectual state of like, I want to learn. And other times I kind of just want to follow a fictional character or some kind of storyline. And then I would start to brainstorm and work because I have definitely identified my most creative time is in the morning. Late in the day, I can be, but it is much harder. So what I did was I blocked off all of my time in the morning. We don't start phone calls until 10 a.m. And I heard you say similar, right? Yes, yes. And it is because I had to, for me to get my time in. So I still, even though I'm off track with getting up in the morning and doing that routine, I still don't start calls till 10 because I will go do my workout prior to that, whether it's a walk, I do Orange Theory certain days, or if I'm traveling, it all goes to, you know what, because it's just hard when you're traveling. But that's like the ultimate goal. And I've been thinking I really need to get back to that
Mm,
early time and that commitment. I'm craving it. I'm really craving it. And I'll tell you why I know that I'm having the challenge, but I need to find a solution. Is for any of you that are in menopause, curious about menopause, it loves to mess with your sleep. And so there are times that I can wake up at 2 a.m. and not go back to sleep till 5 a.m. There are times that I can't sleep until 1:30, 2:30 a.m. Like it's not every night, but it loves to throw me this curveball. And because of that, I also understand scientifically how important sleep is. So I have now given permission to myself that if I need to sleep more, I do it. It's throwing me
yes.
off though.
It is hard. I am not at the awake from 2 a.m. to 5 a.m. phase yet,
I hope you don't.
but I do wake up hot at least once a night,
Mm.
sometimes more. And I am generally very tired at the end of the night, so I find it easy to fall asleep, but I don't always have very restful sleep. And it's really challenging. So I've been setting my alarm later. So I set it for 9 hours because I used to wear a Fitbit for years, probably 10 years, and realized that I, on average, am awake an hour during the night.
Oh,
So I'm able to look at my historical data, sleep data.
yes.
And so I actually intentionally set my alarm for 9 hours of sleep because I know that I'm only really getting 8 if I'm setting it for 9.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
And just making that little adjustment has been helpful because say I set my alarm for 7 hours and I'm like, 7 hours is a great amount of sleep.
Yes.
Well, it's not when you're awake for an hour of
No.
that time
No.
because then you're getting 6 hours, which is cutting it really close.
I love that you're adjusting it. I think that's so smart to do and important. And what I find is that you're talking about 8 hour blocks because I see that's really good. Some people need more, some people need less, right? I find that once I get a plenty of rest, I can slide down to about 7.5 hours, maybe seven. But if I'm tired, I go more. And lately I've been finding, I think it's because of menopause, that there are times I sleep 10 hours.
Oh,
I
okay.
know. It gets
Yeah.
heavenly on one hand, but it's not on the other because I can get hard on myself about there's so much you should be doing right now.
Mm,
There's the word should,
the should.
right? The should.
Yeah.
Um, uh, but I have to then catch myself and to remind myself, yes, maybe I feel like I should be doing that, but it's still going to be there. If it's a huge priority, I know that I'm going to go after it first. But I also understand how, again, important sleep is. So,
I had this dilemma, maybe it was yesterday, where I wanted to get up. Oh, yeah, it was last night. I wanted to get up early this morning to finish editing an episode
yes.
so I could send it to someone to review. And I went to sleep I went to bed around 11 and I said, I'm going to get up at 7:30. And then I was like, no, I'm not.
I love the realness. Who am I kidding?
Yeah, let me put my alarm back to like 8:30 because I know that I'm going to be tired if I try to get up at 7:30. I'm not going to be my best self, right? If I get up, even if I'm going to accomplish something that I know I want to get done, I'm going to be tired all day as a
Yeah.
consequence of that. And then I'm not giving my best to everything else I have on my plate for the day.
Do you have other stuff on your plate?
There's always stuff on my plate.
I
There's too much stuff on my plate.
agree. It's always overflowing. Like, they tell you to do the to-do list and then you prioritize things and what are your top 3 rocks for the day? Like, that's a common strategy. Well, my problem is I do my 3 rocks at the top, like I put them, and then I list all the to-dos to do that day. It is not humanly possible to do them. So what I found is that the very next day I'm transferring vast majority of them over, and then the very next day the vast majority over, and I'm like, this is not working for me.
I do the exact same thing.
It's not working.
I use OneNote and I have checklists and I use their little check boxes, very organized. And I found that I will just copy and paste it to the next day in my OneNote because I'm like, yeah, I didn't get these things done. But
Yeah.
it actually started to create a problem for me. I don't know about you. because then I started to feel like I was failing at something. Like, why do I have so many things on my
Mm.
plate? But then I would look at my list and sometimes it's just like call so and so back or schedule that appointment. These are not things that are stressful.
No, but there are to-dos.
Yeah.
And so there's science behind the fact that when you get to check something off or cross something off, that you get that rush of dopamine. It's that reward. And so, like, I used to joke, but I wasn't joking, that I would put things on my list, such as woke up, get coffee, because it was just in the morning, it was that dopamine, like done and done, right? You already had some momentum. And I don't do that anymore, but you reminded me of that. But then it gets to the point where for me, it gets defeating because I just keep seeing, I'm like, from in your case, you're copying and pasting. Mine, I was doing the physical book because I'm still old school. And I like to be able to see it and have it out and not try to get to that window. I'm the person that if it's out of sight, it's out of mind. It truly is.
Yeah.
So I just had to keep rewriting it over and over. I'm like, this is so dumb. And I tried it for like 6 months. So it wasn't like, possibly longer.
So what did you do? How did you stop? And have you done something differently going forward?
No.
Okay.
If somebody has an answer. So, well, okay, I will take that back. Okay, here's a modification that I'm not going to say it's the solution, but it is a better solution. Okay, so I stopped using the planner that I was using and I have a to do list, but I have two to do lists that are in front of me physically. And one is that I would really like to get to, and then the other one's more of like a wish or a dream. Like these are the things I want to work on. Right. And so what I do is I list everything there. And like, let's say I'm on a call and in the call, I have an action step afterwards. I put it on that list. But each morning I've been going through and I go through, I like scan down through. And if it has to be done that day, like as a priority, I put a star beside it. So then I focus only on the stars. And that really helps me because then I get to check things off. The problem is there's still too many stars most days. But I do get further than I might have had I not been showing myself the priorities. But it's not three. Like who can do three rocks? Like I don't. I have a hard time with that concept. I really want to. Like I get it. I understand it.
Mhm.
But I found, and this is, I also know this is us as humans, is I found that I had my three rocks, which you're supposed to work on first, but I didn't. I did all the little ones because I wanted the momentum. I wanted the feel of dopamine, and it was, to be honest, it was easier.
So I'm nodding and agreeing, but also I have never heard of this three rocks idea before.
Let me tell you all about it.
Yeah, what is three rocks?
So if you have your goals or whatever it is that you want to accomplish, well, let's just say you want to start a podcast, right? Like you've done. If you put down that's the goal, it's unachievable in itself, right? You have to figure out the steps for it. So, three rocks are supposed to be things that you can get done that are going to move you in the most important way. So, if the goal of getting the podcast done is the most important goal, then that should be one of your rocks for the day. So, a rock might be learn the technology and maybe specifically just microphones, right? So it's got to be done. You can break it down however small you want, but it's always momentum toward the goals. Everything else that's below that is not necessarily going to move you toward a goal that you have. It's more of literally a to do.
Where were you 5 months ago when I was trying to figure out how to do all of this? And it was overwhelming. It was
Yes.
like, I need to learn how to use these microphones and use the software and how to set up the room. And I need a workflow. And it was just hard for me to figure out where to know, like, how to, let me start over. It was hard for me to know where to start.
Yes. Yes. No.
See, I discombobulated myself thinking about it.
All the stress came back.
It did.
You're like overwhelmed again. Well, if you could see this setup, I know you only see this part, but I walked in and my mouth dropped because the amount of tech in here, and she knows how to run it all now. So she clearly did it. There's a lot. And I was thinking, wait, you have to know how to do all of this, at least if you want to do the quality and you want to have it be the best that it can be. So kudos to you.
Well, thank you.
You're welcome.
But one thing that you reminded me of with the three rocks is also something I recently learned, which is eat the frog. Have you heard of that?
I have.
It sounds
But
very
tell more.
similar. So eat the frog is pick the task that you least want to do or is most challenging to you and do that one first.
And how do you feel about that?
Well, I avoid the challenging ones.
Because us, well, I was going to say us humans are the same, but maybe not all of us. Don and I are the same.
Yeah, I'm like, what is the thing I don't need to be doing right now? I'm going to do that.
And I will convince myself that it is important because somebody needs it or it's helping me to make progress towards something. It's all true because I'm justifying it, but it doesn't mean what I should be doing.
Well, now there's another technique I heard about that appeals more to the kind of scientist analytic part of me, and that is to give your list numbers. So every item gets a number, and then use a random number generator to pick the task. And then you just do whatever it lands on. And I was like, okay, that appeals to me a little bit more because it
Right.
feels like it's fated.
Exactly. Well, I was sitting here going, the number of tasks I have would help me probably likely still get to avoid the thing I should be doing.
True.
Because
Yeah,
I don't know how long your list is. I guess that wouldn't matter. Like mine is probably 20 to 30 things.
mine is too.
Yeah. So let's say two or three of those things are super important to do. The chances of hitting 27 other numbers are pretty great.
This is actually that's a good way of looking at it. So maybe what you do is partly what you were saying, which is you have your things that really need to be done today, plus maybe a couple of the things that are less important. And that is the list that you give numbers to, but not all 30 things.
Okay. I like that much better.
I think that could work.
I might have to try this just for fun.
I might try
Because
it.
what if it works?
I haven't done it. I was really intrigued by it when I heard it.
Yeah.
The thing I've been trying to do lately, which is a bit of a shift for me, is to categorize the tasks. And then I will go through the list and pick kind of the most important thing on each group of
Mm,
tasks.
yes.
Because I feel like all of them are always important. Everything's
Yeah.
important. Everything needs to be done right now. So this helps me to say, is there at least one thing in each of these areas that I can do? Or is there one block of tasks that really needs attention? Like maybe
Yes.
something is at 10 and one's at 2. Then I can work on the group of 10.
No, I like this. And actually, two more things came to mind that I do have on top of the to do list. I have the reminders on the phone. And so, like, let's say I had a meeting with somebody and they gave me something to do, or I met up with a friend and they're like, hey, text me, let's get together again. I will say, hey, Siri, can you remind me on Monday to text so and so to meet up? And so, my reminders, if I showed you right now, probably has 12 overdue. And all I do is keep moving them to the next day. So, again, this is not working for me. But it feels so good when I can click and check them off.
I have a reminder on my phone that is like from 6 months ago.
Oh,
I
see,
will do the same thing
yeah,
and, oh, text so and so back. Or I ran into somebody, let me remember to send them that book I was talking about.
yes.
Then I never look at the reminder list again.
I get it. So I will see them because it'll pop up and they'll be nice and red. And I'm like, oh, already? But I have learned, for example, like there's a couple things in my business that I want to do, but every time they come up, I will touch it and go, okay, realistically, Lavonna, when could you do this? And I'm starting to push things out 3 months, 6 months. And so I'm just hoping by the time I get there, do I still want to do this? Or is it time to let this go? You really don't want to do it. You think you do.
I really like the idea of that. I've done something similar, but much more limited. I would love to expand it, but is looking at my list and just if I keep bumping something, then I say, do I really need to be have this on my list?
So I have a question for you. Are you more of the visionary person, like you come up with a lot of ideas, or are you more of like you want to just dig in and get the work done?
I'm the visionary person.
So this is where I think our problem might be because I'm also visionary. There's something out there called EOS and it does visionary versus integrator. So if you are the visionary, which a lot of people who start a company are, but to do the actual work is where we start draining ourselves of energy. And so that's why you have an integrator and then other people that support too, if you can. I'm wondering if that's the actual challenge because the ones that I keep moving are my ideas that I love.
Yeah.
Like they're ideas I want to do and I want to implement, but I can't right now. I just don't have the time or I have to bump something else.
Right.
I wonder if that's the challenge.
I think that makes sense because when I think back when I've worked for organizations and had a team, I am most happy and thriving when I have other people to execute on the work. But I mean, that's just my skill. My skill is seeing how systems work, integrating information, organizing information, being strategic. But I am not going to write a project plan or
Me neither.
I don't look at timelines or deadlines. No, I think they're important, but it's helpful to me to have someone who can do that part for me and help me to organize all the 9 million ideas I have. I don't
Yes.
know.
Yes.
Yeah.
I would agree. And for a while, I did have someone who she would go and use a system that would put everything in and it would break it down into steps. And then she would set deadlines for each of those. And it worked to a point, especially with the rest of the team, it worked really well with. For me, Between being the visionary and so many other things where I wanted my time to be and adding the amount of travel that I do, like I just felt like it was really hard to achieve that. With that said, though, I think that could work for some people. But the one thing I have done is I've joined an organization. And so I meet monthly with them, and I'm in a group of five of us, and we're an accountability group. We have a spreadsheet that's online. And before we leave the meeting, we put in what are our goals for the next month. But we also have quarterly goals. So our monthly goals support the quarterly goals. In the monthly goals, though, because we meet monthly, we have to put like very specific what are the things that we're going to hit. Before we go to our next meeting, we show up with a spreadsheet completed, but we also have to put whether we are done, on track, or off track. And that accountability really helps me. Now, of course, I am the person that few days before I go in and I'm like, what goal did I not do? And I'm firing that stuff off and getting it done so that I can say it's either on track or I got it done. But it doesn't matter. That's still a great motivator because it's kind of like the rocks, but it's on a monthly level, not a daily level.
Do you think people are incentivized to want to look good? And so they say that they're on track with something? It's not in any way questioning anyone's integrity. It's just, I feel like as human beings, we have a pressure to want to look good to others and we want to look like we're achieving.
I absolutely think I can speak for myself on that for sure. I have let myself go, it's okay if something was off track. And I have had a couple things off track. But I'm trying to beat the deadline, and it is
Yeah.
because when I show up, you have to read your goal, you have to tell where it is, and you have to explain why. So now I have to justify it. The thing is I find that I will have a justification for it because I can justify it. I have been very busy with other things, but were they the right things?
Ooh, that is the question. How do you determine if something was the right thing?
Because I know myself. I know whether I'm trying to get around it or not to still not look like I didn't do something. The other thing I do is I sometimes give it to another teammate. We use Shine as a framework, and the H in Shine has to do with heart and so about passion. So one of the flags that goes up for me is what are the things that I don't actually love to do? It does drain me. And what teammate can do that? So I can give you an example on our team. We have these conversations often and we try to revisit them. There was a teammate who her responsibility was to write an email and then send the email out to everybody. So like a newsletter type thing. And the newsletter was getting sent at the 11th hour. And so what would happen though is it would get written and then it was sent to me in the 11th hour. And we're supposed to get it out because there's a certain time that everybody kind of expects it or knows it's going to come out. So what was happening is that late at night, it was on me now to read through this, approve, make any changes, get it back to her to get it out. And finally, I thought instead of getting like upset about it, because that's the direction I was heading, is I said, okay, so if we're going to talk Shine here, especially H for heart passion, is this something that she doesn't enjoy doing? We believe in having the conversation. Now, with a caveat, 80-20 rule. About 80% you're going to be good at and you're going to have a passion for, but 20% is part of the job, right? I had a conversation with her, and then on the team meeting, I said, okay, she does not enjoy writing the emails. As a matter of fact, she can't stand it. And that's why things are getting done at the end.
Yeah.
I had a teammate who said, I don't mind writing them. Moved the writing over to the teammate. She now, the one who was writing it, read through it for any corrections or anything that was unclear, and then sent it out. And we've had no problem with it at all.
I love that. Love the idea of letting people do the thing that they want to do and that they're best at, which surprisingly is not a common management philosophy in this country.
True. It's very true. And it's funny because corporations come in with such defined job descriptions. And like, who made that job description up to begin with? Why can't we flex that? Why can't we look and see? And everything's so department, which I understand to a point. I really do, to have systems in place to make sure there's accountability. Like, I get that. But are there things that somebody else would be so much more amazing at, but we're like, it's not their department. Like, why can't it be?
Right.
And so if you're coming together as a team and you just have those conversations, there are people on the team that are possibly in another role and even a different department that if that person is not good at it, but it's part of their job, it could actually be hurting whatever you're trying to get the result for.
Mm.
But again, have the conversation. Could you shuffle that?
I will admit that I thought you were going to go a different direction with this and was in the idea of putting something out that's messy.
Mm,
And so I just went to the ROI summit recently with Rachel Rogers. We Should All Be Millionaires, one of my favorite books.
let's do it.
Yes. And she was talking about in the early stages of her business having a newsletter that she was very meticulous about writing and editing, wanted it to be perfect. She had a gradual process of trying to let that go. So then somebody stepped in and was writing some of the content for her. And then eventually somebody was writing all of the content. And then what she said was, I don't even read the newsletter before it goes out anymore. And she said, you just have to trust the people that you hired to do the thing that you hired them for.
Yes.
And even if it's not perfect, you know that it's out there.
Okay. So you know where I have a challenge with this? Because I still read them before they go out. Is when something is said that I don't necessarily agree with how it's being said. I can get very picky about the verbiage that we use from the point of that it's a common thought or belief, but it's not actually accurate. Or I want them to think about it in a different perspective, like a different way than it coming out more general. Right. One of my things is we are thought leaders. And so if we're going to be thought leaders, we can't put out things that really I could find on social media. And I'll give you an example. I don't tend to use the word problem, right? Because the brain doesn't like to do work. It doesn't like problems. So an example I can say is, Dawn, we're about to do something and it's gonna be a problem. It's gonna be hard. How do you feel right now?
I'm not going to do it.
Exactly. But what if I said to you, Dawn, we're about to do something and it's gonna be challenging?
I like to be challenged.
And see, that's the human nature, right? We prefer challenge. It's just a mindset shift. And so when I see things in the newsletter, like problem, for example, that's a flag to me because that's not the language that I choose us to use. But people will learn this over time. But with that said, I'm going to throw one more thing in. So I use ChatGPT at times. It is a lot of times my thought partner when it comes to business, especially. And I'm trying to work through things and like, okay, but what are some other ways I could look at this or think about this? And I asked ChatGPT the other day, I said, what do you see as areas of improvement as a leader myself, because I do a lot of leadership that I could improve on? It came back perfectionism. And I was like, oh, no, I do not. That is the old me. And then I looked at like what it said and it gave me examples. And I was like, I guess we're still fighting that one.
Yes, I am fighting perfectionism as well. I actually recently read Gifts of Imperfection by Brene Brown.
Yes.
Have you read that
A
one?
long time ago. And I
Okay.
loved it though.
I loved it too. It made me think about myself differently, for sure. I think that book encourages you to find a way to give yourself grace and recognize where that need to be a perfectionist comes from.
Yes. That title even lends it to it because it says the gift of imperfectionism,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
That
The
was
gifts of imperfection.
Yeah,
Yeah.
imperfection. And what's interesting is I had to do some reflection myself because I kept saying to the team, I totally trust you. I want you to have ownership of this. I want you to run with this, make it what you think will be the best and what would be our readers or our clients' need. However, what I found is that I would step in on these little tiny bits. And basically, what I said was, I trust you, but not really. Totally. Have ownership, but let me approve it first.
Right. Doesn't work.
No, it doesn't. It does not.
Well, I would love to get your take on the idea that you give people space to fail and that you, as a leader, are just okay with something perhaps not being what you want it to be. And it just is not the end of the world. So
Yes.
they can put out whatever email or newsletter or whatever it is. And even if it has a word that you don't want in it, you're okay with it being in the world. But also it's an opportunity for learning and growth for them.
It is. It is. And I think having those discussions are paramount. I'm such a believer in that. Like, I'm going to mess up 100%. And it goes back to, I also believe in ownership. Like this morning, something happened with a teammate. She's like, Lavonna, I dropped the ball. I totally own this. Not a problem. Thank you for owning it. And we move on. Right.
Yeah.
Because the team is also already going, okay, how can I fix this? What can I do different? And I'm doing the same, but I've had to model that. And that's been very, very hard for me because I did come so much from perfectionism. But now I'm like, yeah, I messed up. And here's how I'm going to solve it. Or I have no idea who can help. And I think that's so, so valuable.
How long ago was the Chat GPT prompt about the perfectionism?
About a month ago.
And you said your reaction was, that's not me.
Like a visceral reaction.
So you had a visceral reaction. What did you learn from that experience of getting that response back? And how have you integrated that learning?
I recognized, first of all, that this wasn't a human even telling me this. And even if it was, it's something to pause and consider. I always look for trends. If multiple people are saying the same thing, that's a red flag. But when Chad did this, I was like, this is literally a machine who's been watching the amount of input and correction and tweaking. And I don't like that. I think it should be this. It has been watching me for a few months now. And so this is really unbiased. It is looking for a pattern. It recognized a pattern. Of course, I started to justify because I was like, well, no, the reason that I do tweak some of these things is because I do, for our branding purposes, care about what words are being used. And so I justified that part. because I had to relate to the brand, but it's still an awareness of where do I think I've improved, and I do think I have, but where could I do more work that I really it doesn't matter. Let it go. Stop letting it take headspace. Stop it creating any kind of stress or stop it from, even stepping on the toes of my team who I say have ownership and then I kind of don't.
Yeah. One thing I want to pick up on that you said is not letting it take up headspace, because I feel like that ties back into the beginning of our conversation where you talked about getting out of your head
Yes.
and maybe giving yourself an opportunity to let those things go. And I'm going to take us in a different direction, sort of, and just ask, what are some other ways that you also are mindful about the stressors of work or the challenges of just ordinary day-to-day life and how you manage those in addition to like the walks and the meditation, the fitness? What else do you do to take care of yourself?
That's the harder question because I find myself thinking about work so much. So the fact that work is third, like I've come a very, very long way. I'm gonna give myself some credit. I used to work all day, have dinner with my husband, and when my daughter was younger, I'd spend some time with her. And then when she got older, I got back into work. As a matter of fact, the turning point for me was years ago. We had sat down for dinner, and my husband had said, "Do you have work tonight?" And my response is, "I always have work." Right. But at that time, I said that and I said, "Yeah, I do." And I said, "But I think tonight I'll watch a show." Now, I'm going to be fully honest here. Watching a show meant I had my laptop with me working, not watching a show because my husband's like, are you even paying attention to see what happened? I'm like, uh huh. No, I missed it. Right. And so I was not really being present. I was really not doing any of that. And my daughter turned to me and she said, "Do you have a Twitter chat tonight?" And it was her tone. And I went, "Oh my goodness." Like that hit me so hard in the face. And I realized what I had been doing. So I stopped using, like, having the laptop in front of the TV. And that to this day, like, what I've drawn the boundary on that I absolutely am embracing is that I work up until about 5 o'clock. That will fluctuate. My husband is retired. So sometimes if he wants to go do something, I'm like, yeah, let's do it. And other times I'm like, gotta buckle down. But once we have dinner, I don't work after that unless there's something that's like really pressing. I really don't work evenings anymore. And I very rarely work on the weekends unless I want to. There's something that I did want to share, if okay. It's a different thing than what we've been talking about, except it has to do with boundaries and work. And so I'm going to speak to basically moms at this point. I'm actually going to choke up on this because
I wish I don't have tissues in
it's okay.
here.
It's okay.
Okay.
I can, yeah, it's fine. But I get emotional every time. Um, so I was working really, really hard. I'd started my business. And like I said, I travel a lot. And my travel went from 25% of the time to 50% of the time to I was hitting 75% of the time.
Yeah.
I was exhausted. I had a younger daughter at that point, and she, at one point she was 16 years old, and I sat with her on the couch, and I had multiple people over the years say to me, "How do you travel? You're a mom. How do you travel? You have a daughter at home." Well, you might have well taken a knife and stabbed it in my heart because I already had the guilt around it. And so, for anyone who's trying to balance and figure this all out, I sat down with my daughter, 16 years old, and I said, "Does my travel bother you?" And she said, "No, why would it bother me?" And I said, "Do you wish I was home more?" And she said, "Well, it'd be nice to have you home more, but I also like what you do and everything." She said, "I'm totally fine." And she goes, "Where's this coming from?" And I said, "Well, sometimes people will say to me," and she was horrified. Like she got very defensive, which was so sweet. But I said, "Well, I don't know that they always mean it in a negative way. I think sometimes it is out of curiosity. But as a mom, I do feel like I should be here more." And I said, "And if that ever changes where you need me home more, all you have to do is say something." And she said, "I will." And she paused and she goes, "Mom, do you understand the role model that you are for me?" Yeah. And I said, "Really?" And she said, "You're showing me that you have a dream and you go for it. You're teaching me the same." And then she paused again and she turns to me. And at this point, I'm like full on tears. And then she turns to me and she goes, "If you were a man, would somebody say that to you?"
That part.
The 16-year-old wisdom. And I went, "No, I, no." And she goes, "If you were in the military, would anybody say that to you?" And again, I was like, "No, but military is very different level." And she goes, "I understand that." She goes, "But they're serving their country. You're serving other people." So if that helps anyone with, as I thought about work as third and trying to figure out boundaries and guilt that we deal with, I wanted you to hear that.
That's a beautiful message to share. And thanks for sharing that story.
Yeah,
Because I think we all are guilted by other people's expectations. We carry our own guilt for sure.
for sure.
But it is a burden what other people expect of us, what other people think is appropriate for us to do as women, as parents, or as caregivers, or in a particular role. Like if you're a teacher, there are just certain expectations of you, and it's hard to fight back against them. And really, the people that it matters to, like in this case, your daughter, that's whose opinion matters. I was going to come back to travel because you've mentioned it several times, and we've had several people on the show who travel quite a bit,
Yes.
and travel brings them joy. But also, do you need to set boundaries around the travel? That question has come up too.
Yeah, I pulled back from the amount of travel I was doing. This was much later. It's actually more recently in the past, like I would say since COVID, because the pandemic really helped me realize how much I love being home too. And that's when I really said, you know what, I want to do more balance. And so I really became intentional about how much we take on. Really, I mean, yes, I have a team, but it's really me. I'm the one that's traveling. I do have another speaker who goes out and she can speak incredibly on Ignite Your Shine. I'm thankful for her. But here's what's helping me is when do I want to say no? And it's okay to go ahead and say no because I realize like, is this somebody that I really want to work with? Or is this a place that I really want to travel in the winter, drive 3 hours in the snow to get to it? And so all of those factors have helped me. I hate saying no, especially to possible clients, because I know the impact that this makes. And I feel like, I just feel like it's not letting them down, but I feel like I'm not helping them make a difference in their lives that could be made.
I do a little bit of something similar in terms of, well, I was going to jokingly say, I'm not going to Cleveland, Ohio in the winter.
No, it's not the like, yes, let's do it.
Or Minneapolis for that matter, like any of the northern cities. But I do think about travel in terms of, is this a time of year and a place that I want to travel to? Is it easy for me to get there? Do I need to add on extra travel days because it's so far? Just those kinds of considerations are really important. And then also, is this aligned with your brand and the thing that you're doing?
Right.
That not every opportunity is one that you have to take. And that's a hard
Yeah.
lesson for some folks.
It's very hard because not only are you turning down the revenue, but it's also the impact. Like that is why I do what I do. It's the passion behind that impact for others and serving others in a way that I've seen so much evidence from that it's really hard to tell a human no on that. But I also understand from me when I was waking up at 2, 3 a.m. in the morning, pre-menopause, waking up 2, 3 a.m. To go to the bathroom and shaking, like my whole body trembling because that's how exhausted I was. But I love so much what I do. The adrenaline carries me. But that's not healthy to be to the point of trembling. That's when I was like, yeah, you're gonna have to change this.
Yeah. Well, listen to your body.
Yep.
Your body will shut it down for you.
Yes, I will. I've had that happen.
What? What happened?
Yeah, I ended up in the hospital. And so it was to this day, they still don't know what caused it, what the problem was, but I was in for I think 5 days. And yeah, and they did
That's
all kinds of tests and I mean, oh, all the needles in the world and just really trying to figure it out. But I was really, really sick. And I really think it had to do with not taking care of myself. And so it's funny because people say to me now, "Lavonna, you eat so healthy." And I do, especially at home. I'm very intentional at home because when I travel, it's not always easy, or I don't want to pay $15 for a salad at the airport that has lettuce, a couple shreds of carrot, and maybe, I don't know, a
A
piece
hard
of
boiled
celery, a hard
egg.
boiled egg. Yes. It's
That is the
15.
airport salad.
Yes, it is. It is. So I've gotten to the point when I'm home, my workouts are going to get in because they don't always on the road. The reality is, I fly in and it's about 11 o'clock at night. And then I get up at 6 a.m., get ready to go speak. I arrive at 7 for sound check, all those things. And then at 8 o'clock, we're on or 9. There's not a lot of flexibility by the time I'm done, then I'm off to the airport again. And so could I technically do it? Well, of course, but it's at the cost of my health. It's at the cost of my sleep. And the other thing I realized too, and for anyone else that travels a lot, especially for work, I found that people have said, Lana, you've been to so many places. But when I turned 40, I realized I'd been to a lot of places, but I hadn't actually been to a lot of places. And so one of the things that I changed is when I arrive, the goal is to see a landmark or to eat at a famous restaurant or a local restaurant that they recommend. And I love supporting local. It's my favorite. Sometimes it is at the cost of not getting my workout in.
I do the same thing, and I love it so much. I recently went to North Dakota for work, and that was a decision where I really wanted to engage with a community of public health practitioners that I hadn't worked with before. I have never been to North Dakota, and it was in May. So I said, this is perfect, right? It's
It's
perfectly
perfect.
aligned. And then I rented a car. I stayed after the conference ended and I drove around North Dakota, South Dakota, and Wyoming and looked at landmarks I've never seen before. So I went to Mount Rushmore and the Crazy Horse Memorial. I went to Bear Lodge. I slept in a teepee. I um I saw the world's largest Holstein cow, which is just
Oh,
giant cow sculpture.
that's amazing.
But it was really fun, and it's just I wanna take advantage of those opportunities. If I'm in a place I haven't been before, or even if I go back, like, I love DC, I could just go all the
Mhm.
time. But just to be intentional about getting out and being in the place and experiencing it.
Yes, yes. That it reminds me when I had turned 50 and I realized I had been to 47 states of the 50. And we were having a hurricane back here in Florida and I was out in California and I was flying to well, I was gonna supposed to go home to Tampa and then up to New York. And then I was gonna go from New York and drive through Massachusetts up to Vermont. And Vermont was gonna be one of my states I hadn't hit. But it's a pretty easy, close drive. And we got the hurricane that was coming in. I said to my husband, I'm worried that I'm not going to get out to New York if I come home. And he's like, well, why don't you just stay out there and do something different? So I realized my last three states were Montana, Wyoming, and then Vermont. So I didn't fly home. I flew to Montana. I explored some of Montana and I drove down to Jackson Hole, Wyoming. I explored Wyoming, drove down through Wyoming to Denver, Colorado. So I was at State 49 and then I flew from there to New York and then drove up through Massachusetts. And I have a little sign that I made at a hotel on a piece of copy paper with a marker that I had, and it says 50 and 50. And I stopped at the Vermont sign. There was like a handmade one, or somebody made it. It wasn't like the official street sign. And there's a picture of me. Another woman had stopped to get a picture too that she had made it to Vermont. And I was like, listen, if you take my picture, I'll take yours. And so it's this really crude sign, but it says 50 and 50.
You've inspired me. I'll be 48 this year, and I think I have 6 states to go.
You are so close. You have to.
Yeah. I really want to. Well, that was part of the North Dakota, South Dakota, Wyoming. So I have also not been. No, wait. No, I haven't been to Vermont. I have not.
Oh,
Or
it is
Connecticut,
stunning.
weirdly.
Okay, so I hit it in, I think, September. If you can, highly recommend because the leaves are changing. Like, I have a picture that people are like, there's no way you took that picture. I'm like, yes, I was crossing. I'm not saying to use your phone when you're driving, but I was at a stop sign and I was approaching the traffic light, I should say. And I was crossing over a railroad track and I looked to my right and it was the railroad track that was overgrown with greenery. And then it had the fall trees. And I rolled down my window, took a picture, and that's the picture that it is so stunning. It is yeah, it's one of those where I felt like I really captured a moment and I was present, like, it drew me in immediately, and so it's a great time to go.
Oh, it's on my list now. Fall in Vermont.
Yes, and it was a great way to end it. Like, the 50th and the 50th was just beautiful, and then
Yeah.
I did part of the cheese trail, and just I was by myself. I found a famous, like, glass blower, and so I bought one of his glass pieces, and yeah, it was just fun.
I should put out a plug. If anyone is listening and would like to hire me to be a speaker in Idaho, Connecticut, Vermont, Kansas, what else am I missing? Maybe I'm down to 4. Oh, Alaska.
Oh, okay, well, maybe okay, Vermont, you might have to go Alaska. I did it on a cruise, and it was my most favorite cruise. Yes, okay, so I'm loving this. Bring Dawn in. She needs to speak. She's incredible work. Holy cow, and this is what I admire about you, Dawn, is the work that you do, and I also admire I hope it's okay that I share this. We were in a group together and there was a moment where somebody said something that was not something that should have been said in that way and they did not mean it that way, but needed to be enlightened or educated. And the way that you handled that in that moment in front of the whole group, because I was like, is she going to say something or not? Like, what happens in this moment? And you were the leader of the group and you said, I just want to pause. But you said, I already asked her permission to make sure that's okay to share this, but I just wanted to educate you all. And your skill set, the way that you work with people, and the way you make people feel, like it's such an admiration for you, and you're such a role model. And I just appreciate you because that was not an easy conversation or easy topic. It's aligned with the topic of what you do, but it shows me how comfortable you are, and also with understanding that having the conversation is more important than not.
Thank you so much for that. I remember
Yes.
that moment. And the truth is, my heart was racing
Mm,
because I did debate with myself for several minutes. Like, should I say something? Am I the am I the right person? And then I was like, of course I'm the I'm the right person to say something in this situation. But it was important to me to also make sure that she was comfortable. The woman who made the statement was comfortable with me sharing that in front of the group. I hate when people get called out and they don't know why they're getting called out or they're not expecting it. But I think it was a learning moment for the whole group. But even in that moment, it was still a scary thing to me to
Yeah.
speak up. And it was the right thing to say. I felt 100% stillness and peace in my heart saying it.
Yes.
But just getting over that little hump to actually start that little piece of the conversation was hard.
Well, you wouldn't have known it because you just did it so eloquently and right in a right way, where you saved face for her, but also made it aware for anyone else who wasn't aware that what the way that was phrased is not the way we should phrase things. And so I thought that was just incredible. But going back to the actual point was like bring Dawn in because just again, I'm gonna just do this plug for her. But yes, no, do. And especially if you're in those 6 states. I mean, she'll do other states, but those six, she'll put them in the show notes.
Yes. Yes, thank you. I will be putting them in the show notes.
Accountability.
All right. So as we end this conversation, one thing that I'm curious about is there something you are taking away from today's conversation or something that came up for you that you want to share before we close?
Yeah, I want to go back to just that word control because I think we use it in a positive and a more negative way. Control in a positive light would be what I just mentioned about controlling the guidelines and making sure that I stick to that to hold myself accountable. In this case, you're also going to hold me accountable. So that's great. But we also use it in the negative light of when we forget and we let other people control what we think or what we say or the guilt we have. And really, so it can be a positive and negative, and just going forward, like really being aware and thinking to yourself, what are the times that I can control this in a way that it is a positive light for me, and only you can decide that because it is for you. And then the control with the negative of how do I change this?
I like thinking that there are two sides to the control coin.
It just came to me
Yeah.
from this conversation.
Well, I hope that this week you are able to experiment with a way of not using your phone as much, that you have safe travels coming up,
Thank you.
and that you have a joyful rest of the week.
I will. Because again, that's the thing that you can control to a certain point,
That
right?
is a thing you can
You
control.
can focus on those things. So it's like how I just call them glimmers.
Yeah.
And so it's the same. So best to you. Thank you for doing this podcast because you are changing people's way they think, knowing they're not alone. And so, and work is third. It does not have to be at the top of where our society can also often put it. So thank you for everything you're doing.
Ah, thank you. It means a lot to me. I really, it's not just a podcast to me, it's a movement.
Yes.
And I hope really people start to reframe how they think about work in their lives.
Yay. Do it, do it, do it.
Thanks for being on the show.
Thanks for having me.
That's it for today's conversation with Lavonna Roth. If this episode made you think differently about control, boundaries, or the balance between productivity and rest, I would love for you to share it. Be sure to follow Work is Third and check show notes for links to Lavanna's work, resources we mentioned, and more ways to stay connected. Please also consider rating and leaving a review. Until next time, remember, you get to decide how work fits into your life, not the other way around.